Record labels are coming after Tunecore. The feeling that I get when I read through this complaint is just grossed out. I'm fired up, and you guys know how I feel about Tunecore, okay? Tunecore and these music distributors have been bullies. They have been unfair. And so for me, I'm like, man, this is just dog eat dog, because now we got a new bully. I really never thought that I would be making this video. We talked about how the major record labels came together, got this great idea to sue Suno and Udio, and it's over copyright infringement, and this is in the millions of dollars. And it's an interesting question as far as should these platforms have gotten a license to train their AI on popular music? Okay, so that's a pending question. And then the record labels got together again. They go, you know what? This is a really good idea that we go after music businesses. So then they sued, well, a list, all right? And one of them is actually Internet Archive. So for Wayback Machine, I love Wayback Machine. And they're suing Wayback Machine for $600 million. And now they're suing Believe and Tunecore. So if you don't know, Believe is the parent company of Tunecore. Tunecore is a music distributor. As we're going to go through this complaint, and my jaw has just been on the floor, is that I go, what's happening here is that record labels are starting to use statutory damages under copyright law as a weapon, and they're weaponizing it against other businesses because they go, you know what? We're not going to worry about trying to exploit artists anymore and make a ton of money off of artists because they're not really making money. We're now going to go after other businesses. And so we see these lawsuits and the hundreds of millions of dollars, including this one against Tunecore now for $500 million. Now, here's the thing. If you are new to this channel, earlier this year, I took on Tunecore in a real kind of way. And there was an issue that we were having through my law firm, and we had kind of hit a wall with Tunecore. And I was like, you know what? I'm fed up. And my client gave me permission to talk about the case freely on the channel. So I did. It all but started a war between Tunecore and me, but we just went with it. And so we shared what was going on. And we're talking about Tunecore again today, but now the major record labels are coming after Tunecore. Here's the thing. The feeling that I get when I read through this complaint, which we're going to go and do together, is just grossed out. I feel grossed out by really what record labels are doing on this new kind of predatory method. And like I said, I think they just got tired of, going after people with not deep pockets. And so now they're going after businesses. Why don't we go over to the complaint? Because I think it tells the story real nice. All right, so here we go. This was filed a couple days ago, and this is in the federal court in New York. And so here we are again. We see Universal, we see Capitol Records, we see a few other record labels, including Concord Music Group, and it's a complaint for copyright infringement against Believe and Tunecore. So then they define, Believe and Tunecore collectively, they refer to it as Believe, but it's Tunecore. So here we go on just the preliminary statements. All right, so Believe is a global commercial distributor of sound recordings. It has been able to achieve dramatic growth and profitability in recent years by operating as a hub for the distribution of infringing copies of the world's most popular copyrighted recordings. So here's the thing. This lawsuit is against Tunecore, but I am thinking through this for all music distributors out there, because this is not where these record labels are going to stop with this. They just are picking on Tunecore to start. So where they started, they go, Tunecore has been achieving a lot of money, a lot of profitability as a hub for distributing infringing music. So like, this is what Tunecore does. Okay, interesting way to start. That's not what I've heard about Tunecore and generally music distributors, but wow, it sounds like it's quite the thing. So this lawsuit, this action is filed to address and stop Tunecore's massive ongoing infringement and its brazen attempt to build its business by converting the value of those priceless recordings. All right, so the priceless recordings being those that are owned by the record labels. So Tunecore has amassed an enormous catalog of sound recordings by entering into contracts with, quote, artists or purported record companies, sometimes referred to as labels. Okay, and just so that we're all clear on what they're saying, when Tunecore enters into these contracts with artists and labels, this is the terms of service. Okay, this is where we've spent a lot of time analyzing these different music distributors, because you, as creators, in order to distribute your music to music platforms, you cannot upload your stuff directly. You have to go through a music distributor. And so we have been very critical of the terms of service that you are required to sign to use these platforms, which you don't have the right to negotiate, which you don't have the right to say anything about other than just to click the button, which most of us just click that button of I accept. We don't read it. I read them and then I tell you what they say. So we have in fact looked at, these contracts. So what they're saying is these contracts that Believe is putting together with these artists and music producers to essentially steal. Like that's what they're saying here. So let's make sure we're all clear and on the same page. All right, so Believe signs these agreements, and really it's the artist. So you guys, as you were trying to just distribute your music to music platforms, so you're signing with these distributors, and then they're saying that Tunecore is then putting your music, okay, into licensing deals, negotiating, and putting your music on social media platforms and other music services. So they're putting your stuff on Spotify. They're also sending it to TikTok, YouTube, Apple Music, Instagram, and hundreds of other places. Okay, is that true? Yes, of course. For anyone who's ever uploaded their music to DistroKid or wherever, I also have used these platforms. You upload, it's like, hey, where do you want us to send your stuff? And they usually give you a big list. You can usually unselect the platforms you don't want your music on, and it includes social media. And so the reason why it includes social media is because there's a workaround that these different platforms have come up with. They're like, we're not music platforms, but us as Meta, right? So Facebook, Instagram, we're going to receive copies of your music, and we have a license agreement in place for this. So this is how we hear music on these music platforms that are in, let's say, stories, or we can add them to our reels. It is actually properly licensed. And that's why music distributors are then pushing the music to these platforms. Again, context is really important here. That's not in this complaint, but I'm giving you the context. All right, so they go, they're distributing all this fraud, lying, infringing music to music platforms and social media. So plaintiffs, the record labels, own or have exclusive rights to the music from world-renowned artists like ABBA, Ariana Grande, Beastie Boys, Bon Jovi, Daddy Yankee. Okay, we have a big old list here. Elton John, Fall Out Boy, Justin Bieber, Katy Perry, Kendrick Lamar, Lady Gaga. I mean, the list just goes on and on. All right, so they're like, we've invested, tons of money and time into all this music, Tunecore makes little effort to hide its illegal actions. Indeed, the name of its, quote, artists and recordings are often minor variants of the names of the record label's famous recording artists and the titles of their most successful works. For example, Tunecore has distributed infringing tracks with the names, and then so it's Kendrick Lamar with a different spelling, referring to, obviously, Kendrick Lamar, the artist, Ariana Grande with a different spelling, Justin Bieber with a different spelling. So they go on to just essentially make the point that there are users on Tunecore who are using similar names to popular artists to then distribute music. And so they're like, Tunecore is not even trying to hide its illegal actions. There's just a jump of logic that is happening here. And this is where I get frustrated, kind of being a practitioner in the judicial system with people who don't know how music works, who don't understand how music distribution works, because then you have someone sitting here writing a complaint because they're getting paid a whole lot of money, $500 an hour, on behalf of these major record labels to sue a music distributor. Now, for those of you who are like, anti-music distributors, you're loving this, and I understand. But again, I always go from both standpoints of like, is there essentially an abuse of a mechanism through copyright of what's happening right here? So let's go back to, again, what they're saying. They go, well, Tunecore or, whatever music distributor they're going to end up suing. It's Tunecore right now. There are users on the platform that are allegedly uploading music that violates the copyrights that we have because we own all these artists' music. We're not here fighting for the artists. We own the music. And they're using names, and therefore they're saying that Tunecore is like in cahoots with these artists in doing it. And that's what I'm saying, that there's such a leap of logic here. I'm interested to see how they define this. Are they like the Lady Gaga with a different spelling? They got together with that artist. We're like, aha, we're going to have you upload the music and distribute it. So this is what they're saying. You can understand why I'm having a difficult time with this, but let's keep going. Tunecore's illicit strategy to accumulate and monetize a vast music catalog of infringing recordings has been wildly successful. Tunecore has distributed millions of sound recordings to the DSPs, indeed more than the number of legitimate recordings distributed by plaintiffs and other major labels and reputable independent labels combined. While Tunecore is fully aware that its business model is fueled by rampant piracy, it has eschewed basic measures to prevent copyright violations and turned a blind eye to the fact that its music catalog was rife with copyright infringement and sound recordings. I mean, God, the drama. Tunecore's illegal activities go beyond the flagrant infringement of plaintiffs' copyrighted sound recordings. And so they go on just to say, basically Tunecore is allegedly knowingly distributing music that doesn't belong to it, and they break this down. They're like, there's basically like sped up versions of songs, there's slowed down versions of songs. Sometimes they're being distributed by artists who are using similar names. And I just go to, like, for a music distributor of the size of Tunecore or DistroKid or Symphonic or CD Baby, where they are ingesting hundreds of thousands of uploads. And I don't know the exact number for each of these platforms and how many artists they either currently represent or have represented, right, at some point, but it is a huge number. And part of the problem is that these music distributors, and why you guys are so frustrated with them and why you end up contacting me to write letters to get through to their legal department, is because you just can't get a response from these platforms. And it's because they have so much that they're managing and they do not have enough customer service to actually give you a meaningful, helpful response. And that by itself is extremely frustrating. So we're dealing with kind of a volume issue right now. And so what the record labels are saying is they're like, you're in cahoots with people who are uploading content that might have copyright samples in it, or otherwise it's just an instrumental that's sped up. And so this is what the record labels are claiming. And this is why I'm having a hard time with these lawsuits, because they're very predatory. And copyright infringement in particular, there is a mechanism under the Copyright Act where you can seek statutory damages. That means that you can seek a range of amounts of money up to $150,000 per infringement if you claim that the infringement is willful. So lo and behold, these record labels are coming together and they found a new strategy for making money. And the strategy is to sue other businesses. And what they're saying here, I'm just saying, and you guys drop a comment down below if you disagree. All right, what do you think? Does it make sense what they're saying, that you all are coming together as creators and music producers to steal, and you're working with Tunecore to do that? So as just one example, Tunecore has taken advantage of the content management claiming system on well-known YouTube platforms to assert copyright ownership in numerous of plaintiffs' recordings, thereby diverting or delaying payment of royalties properly payable to plaintiffs. Okay, so AKA Tunecore is collecting and monetizing your music on YouTube. Duh, that's a service all music distributors, or at least all the ones that I've seen, provide. So again, it's like, oh my gosh, they're doing this thing. I'm like, no kidding. Of course they do that thing. They're a music distributor. Tellingly, even after conflicts on YouTube involving obvious infringement, recordings had been resolved in favor of plaintiffs, so in favor of the record labels, meaning that Tunecore acknowledged that it had no rights in a particular recording. Tunecore continued to distribute the exact same track to other digital music service providers and to seek royalties for use of that track in those providers. So, just as an example of kind of, what I do as a real lawyer, sometimes I'm fighting with music platforms because what happens is that the music platform, let's say it's Spotify, and if Spotify says, we think someone filed a copyright infringement claim, someone filed a trademark infringement claim, we think there's been streaming fraud, whatever the alleged bad act is, the music platform will send a notice to the distributor. As soon as that distributor gets the notice, across the board, distributors will take down the music because they go, I don't want to be involved in this. I'm not going to, get sued for copyright infringement. And also there's a reason under the law that they do this. And this is going to go into, if I was advising Tunecore, which I'm not, I fight with Tunecore, but nonetheless, in the matter of fairness, I will give my thoughts on what I would do. But in any case, they pull everything down, and even if it's not right, even if it's not fair, no one's proved anything, that is what music distributors do. And then we jump in, and let's say we're talking with Spotify, and we're going directly to Spotify, and we're trying to explain this was a fraudulent claim, and this person does not have the actual rights. It's common that that one platform that is affected still does not affect the other platforms. So again, I go back to just how this is drafted and being like, even though we said that clearly there was copyright infringement on certain platforms, the other platforms were still alive. Therefore, this proves Tunecore knew what it was doing. Again, just practically speaking, No, you were mistaken. If you are someone that is needing help in the music business, at the end of this video, you can check out topmusicattorney.com. I have courses, I have free stuff just to kind of get you started. If you do want to deep dive, if you do want to train with me, I always say go through my music business program, which is how to think like a record label, become a record label. And then if you do want to get into touch with me or one of my lawyers, we got you covered. All right, and then here we go. So with all that bad stuff happening and Tunecore in cahoots with you artists out there, the major record labels are seeking $500 million for this past, present, willful infringement. Okay, so look, let's jump a little bit more. Let's get into the details. I'm going through the jurisdiction and party information, and let's just cut to the chase here. In order to grow its business, Tunecore has amassed a vast catalog of sound recordings by entering into contracts with individuals or labels. Again, AKA, when you sign up to get onto Tunecore's platform, you sign and you click, I accept the terms of service. So, in the way that they're representing this, again, the whole we're doing deals together. No, you guys are being forced to sign terms of service, but you're not actually negotiating anything. You're not signing a contract. But anyway, so they're going on. Tunecore is doing all these deals with individuals and labels who purport to grant Tunecore the right to market and distribute their content in digital form. And then they cite two articles, which made me laugh. They're like, look at our proof, not the strongest citation. To arrange distribution of this content, Tunecore enters into agreements which service providers such as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, Amazon, and social media platforms such as Instagram and TikTok, which purport to provide those services providers with a license to exploit the content for a certain period of time within a defined region. Now, for those of you wondering, this is why, for example, when you do a cover song, because we talk about this all the time, right? It's okay for you to do a cover song, to put your cover song, which is totally new. It doesn't have any sampling in it, nothing from the original song. It's literally just your version of someone else's song, which is permitted under the Copyright Act. Under the Copyright Act, you are allowed to distribute that to streaming platforms. So then the question is, well, what happens when your cover song gets distributed to social media platforms? Because social media platforms are not built into this little framework, right? And so, the answer is, well, there technically are issues with how things are actually happening that conflict with the state of the law. But the way that everyone's worked around this is that they just do deals directly. So Tunecore is going to do its deal directly with TikTok, directly with Instagram, directly with YouTube. And that's how there's just been some kind of synergy and fluidity and not just mass lawsuits against people who are distributing cover songs that are then on social media. That's how that works. Tunecore monitors the success of the tracks it distributes, including for the purpose of identifying high potential artists. It also utilizes copyright management systems provided by certain online service providers such as YouTube, Content ID, yes, we know this, to claim ownership of the copyrights in the recordings embodied in the tracks it distributes. Okay, what do you mean to claim ownership? Okay, music distributors are monetizing. They are claiming the ad revenue on behalf of artists if you elect for this service. You don't have to. Most of the time, distributors are taking something like 20%. That's the minimum that I've seen. And they go and they will collect anytime your music is used in other people's videos. Okay, so it's like a nice service. But again, the way that they're representing it here, and they're claiming the ownership of the copyrights. No, that's not accurate. Tunecore's knowing and willful exploitation of plaintiffs' copyrighted music. Okay, so this is starting to sound like statutory damages. In Tunecore's pursuit of rapid growth, it has relentlessly pursued the goal of distributing as many tracks as possible. On information and belief, Tunecore has distributed millions of tracks to digital service providers, which is vastly more than the number of sound recordings that are collectively distributed by plaintiffs and other major labels and reputable independent labels. Okay, I mean, I'm not going to argue that music distributors are distributing an insane amount of music to music platforms. This is part and parcel with the whole AI conversation. If there's something like 800,000 audio clips coming out of just Udio, every single day. You can imagine the ingestation that is happening for these music platforms. And then obviously you have to go through a music distributor. Okay, so fine. So they're relentlessly pursuing the goal of growth. And by doing this through just distributing as many tracks as possible. Now, here's the thing. We're going to start thinking about the money piece here, because so far what these major labels are saying, they're like, this is this big like pyramid scheme of Tunecore to come in and get with the artists, get with the producers, get with the AI creators, and to distribute as much music as humanly possible. Now, I'm guessing where they're getting at with this is it's because Tunecore takes a share of the earnings, right? Let me not put words into their mouths. Let's see. To help achieve this goal, Tunecore has knowingly and intentionally adopted a business model pursuant to which it distributes the tracks it receives, including from questionable sources with no prior history of creating sound recordings, without any effective review to identify infringing copies of copyrighted recordings. I don't know if that's true. Do they even know that that's true? Because here's the thing. I mean, my understanding with these music distributors is that there is a review process that happens just to make sure that everything is buttoned up. And they are checking for just like, even for the distributors that I actually know and have worked with, they tell me that they have these different systems where they run the music through. They're trying to check for like sampling. They're trying to check for AI. They're doing some steps to just look at what it is that they're about to distribute, because distributors do have a duty to make sure that their platform is not being used to do bad things, right? And so they're like, no, Tunecore is knowingly and intentionally doing this and allowing questionable sources with no prior history of creating sound recordings. The whole point of these distributors is that they're like DIY. Yeah, I would guess that the far majority of the users are probably creators, like a first-time creators, and who have no prior history of creating sound recordings. So I'm just like, the way this is drafted just makes it feel like this person is extremely out of touch of how things actually work. So there's no, good enough review to identify infringing copies of copyright recordings. And I don't know if Tunecore has any process in place, right? But they're making assumptions here. As a result, a significant portion of the most popular tracks that Tunecore has distributed blatantly infringe plaintiffs' copyrighted recordings, as well as other popular copyrighted recordings. Okay, how is there copyright infringement? Let's get into that. For example, in 2023, the record labels determined that many popular tracks streamed by social media users included Tunecore distributed tracks that infringed the rights of the record labels and other major record labels. At all relevant times, Tunecore has been fully aware that it has been distributing infringing tracks to social media platforms and other digital services. Many of the infringing tracks distributed by Tunecore are sped up versions of plaintiffs' popular recordings. Tunecore is well aware that such tracks are popular on certain digital services and are more likely to evade the checks that digital music services use to detect infringing materials on their platforms. Okay, so, again, reading between the lines here. So are you saying, major record labels, that people are doing sped up versions, right, of copyrighted content owned by, let's say, Universal or one of these other major labels, and then that user is distributing that song through Tunecore? So you're saying that is the thing that Tunecore is in cahoots with the artist to do? Again, I go back to what are they doing? Hey, Johnny, why don't you just go ahead and speed up Lady Gaga's New Disease song? Great song, by the way. Why don't you just go ahead and speed that up, and then let's distribute it, and we're going to make millions together. All right, so they go on, they just give a table. They're like, look, here's some examples. So they go, for example, Ariana Grande, Billie Eilish, Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga. And so they go, the original song is noted here. Okay, so for example, Just Dance, Lady Gaga. And they go, there is another artist, another user on Tunecore going by these names. And so we see in some instances totally different names. This one is a misspelling of Ariana Grande. Again, total different usernames. Okay, and then in some instances we see a sped up. We see a remix. And, for me as a copyright attorney, I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that people are just doing unauthorized remixes and they're doing mashups and they're infringing major label copyrights. Okay. Yeah, I can tell you this stuff happens. And, labels have to make the decision. They're like, is it worth it for us to go and actually go after all these infringers, because it is so broad, and especially on social media where you have a hit. If you have something go viral and it's because it was an unauthorized mix-up, mashup, not okay. People do it all the time. And then what labels typically do nowadays is that they actually don't sue these DJs who do these mashups or these remixes. They reach out to them, they go, hey, you obviously, you came up with a hit song. And so now we want to sign it. We are going to need, obviously a cut of everything you've made to date and all this stuff, if not the whole thing. So they try to monetize. So them just being like, oh, there are, of hundreds of thousands of artists, here's like 5 who did unauthorized remixes and sped it up and all that. So this is it, Your Honor. Tunecore is in cahoots. Now here's the thing. Is potentially Tunecore indifferent? That's a different aspect here, and being like, are there not strong enough safeguards in place by Tunecore? Okay, I'm looking at this in the 4 corners of what they're saying. Now, can they potentially soften their position and be like, you know what, it's not good enough? They probably don't know this information. They're going to get it as part of discovery. That's the beautiful thing about, a lawsuit. You get to ask for whatever the hell you want in relation to your claim, which is I want to know your methodologies. I want to know the platforms you use and the systems that you use and the apps that you use. And so they will start to build their case by actually going through discovery. All right, so Tunecore's distribution of these and other obviously infringing tracks demonstrates that it does not engage in basic measures to weed out infringing material from its catalog. Tunecore knows full well that it has no right to distribute or to license these tracks, but does nothing to identify these obvious infringements. See, you go so hard. It does nothing. I don't know what Tunecore does. I doubt that's true, though. I bet Tunecore absolutely does do something. In addition, Tunecore has been made aware of indica of specific instances of infringement by virtue of YouTube's Content ID system, which identifies instances in which a recording in which Tunecore has claimed a copyright interest in the same is similar to a recording in which plaintiffs have claimed a copyright interest. Okay, so AKA, again, Tunecore is just claiming the ad monetization for songs that are distributed through its platform. Now, what do I think actually is happening here? I think people are slipping through the cracks. I think sampling slips through the cracks, copyright infringement, okay, trademark where someone is using someone else's name. And it is not the distributor's job to be the judge and jury. Even if you're someone who has dealt with a music distributor and you're frustrated because you're like, I asked them to do this, I'm trying to get some help and all this stuff, and they're not doing something. I'm telling them I have the rights, and I'm even giving them like a copyright registration, and they're telling me that their hands are tied and they're not going to do anything. That's why I just said at the beginning of this, that is what they do, because they go, we're not the judge and jury. We can't make legal determination of like who is being truthful or whatever. We have to kind of go through this certain system because they do have systems in place, because there are so many claims. And unfortunately, a lot of the ones that I deal with on behalf of you guys are the claims that your music, copyright infringement, trademark infringement, streaming fraud, your stuff gets taken down, you get locked out of your accounts, your royalties are taken because of these crappy distribution agreements with these distributors. So then the question here is, well, what can be done? Anything? And what I can tell you is that pursuant to copyright law, under 17 USC, it's 512C, there's what's called safe harbor. The reason why the music distributor is taking everything down immediately as soon as that there is a claim, because under the Copyright Act, so long as the middleman does these things. One is they don't actually know that there's infringement happening. They weren't aware of it, and they're not like in cahoots with the Ariana Grande with the misspelling. They're like, let's do this. We're going to make so much money together. 1, you don't know about it. 2, you remove it immediately as soon as there's even a claim. 3, you have a designated agent. So just meaning there's someone in the company who's going to deal with the DMCA takedowns, okay? And then 4, that there cannot be direct financial benefit. Now here's the little piece. Again, those were the 4 things. And as long as we satisfy these 4 things, a music distributor is not going to be liable for copyright infringement by someone who is using its platform. And like logically, the reason why that is there, because it would destroy companies who are middlemen if they got sued every time someone did something bad on their platform. Okay, so then we go to, all right, well, what about number 4, where it said there can be no direct financial benefit? Now, for those of you who are using Tunecore, drop a little comment down below. Okay, I'm always interested for your feedback, and some of you have had great experiences with Tunecore, and that's great. I'm so happy for you. So I went to Tunecore's website today, and I was like, all right, well, some distributors do a percentage. So they'll be like, we'll distribute your stuff, and we take 20, 30% of anything that you make. And so in which case, maybe we could justify what they're saying in this complaint. They're like, well, they're coming together and they're distributing the music, and then Tunecore is making all this money from the infringing music. So let's see, what kind of money do they make? All right, so Tunecore, choose the right plan for your music distribution. And I go, okay, well, look, if I was going to go in real big, $50 a year, there's 40 a year, 23, and then there is a free option. So what are the differences? So the one thing I'm coming to immediately is I go, oh, look at this. It says 100% revenue from digital stores. Okay, does that mean I get to keep all my royalties? And I go, well, is that the case for all of the payment plans? So I go, all right, so we go across. When we get to free, it doesn't say that. Okay, interesting. But it does say that for all of the paid tiers. So then I go, okay, what's the reality then? If TuneCore is not basing its entire business model on making a percentage of the music that is distributed, and there might be kind of this subset of the free accounts, but generally speaking, it looks like they just take a one-time payment upfront and then people get benefits from there. So I go, okay, that doesn't so very much go to this whole idea of like being in cahoots, right? In numerous cases, TuneCores use YouTube's Content ID to claim ownership or copyright ownership in plaintiffs' owned or distributed sound recordings. All right, so like they keep saying this over and over. We get it. However, TuneCore has often continued to distribute and purport to license the exact same tracks to other digital music services, including Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and TikTok. On Information Belief has continued to collect royalties from these tracks from other platforms. Just recently, through my office, one of the problems we were dealing with is that a client literally did a cover, and the cover sounded a little bit like the original. Okay, it was a female voice, and she had this delightful edge to how she sang, and she sounded like the original singer a little bit, but it wasn't, it was a cover. And the song got taken down by one of the platforms. And we went not only to the music platform, but we also went to the distributor and we're talking to everybody and we're like, this is a cover. What do you want me to say? Like, it's not my fault. It sounds like the original. It's not sampling. Under the law, our client is able to do this, so you better put it back up. And we were just fighting tooth and nail to get this song reinstated. At the same time, the song was still up on all these other platforms. So again, I go back to them being like, we think that there's been infringement, and then it still continued to be up on other platforms. Okay, well, for how long? And was there actually infringement? And do you see where I'm going with this? Like, did the distributor, upon notice, eventually take it down from all the platforms? Or are you saying you just got the proverbial middle finger? All right, so they go on. Again, more examples. YouTube, there was Aqua, Barbie Girl, and then there was another artist who had an infringing version of Barbie Girl, and it was available in all these different services and all the bad stuff that just continued to happen. I'm sure they're just using this as a little representative sample, but this is the second time they're like, look at these examples, and they have like 5. Just saying. TuneCore, and then here we go. So this is our 4th prong in the safe harbor analysis. So TuneCore benefits directly from distributing infringing tracks. We're curious how, right? We just took a look at what they're earning. So how are they making money? TuneCore's revenue is largely driven by the size and the popularity of the music catalog that is distributed across the digital music ecosystem. Is that true? So we know that they make more money the more subscribers are on its platform. But what they're saying is that the bigger the music catalog that is distributed across music platforms, the more money that TuneCore makes. What am I missing here? Most of TuneCore's revenue comes from retaining a share of the payments that service providers make for their use of the tracks distributed by TuneCore. So many of TuneCore's most popular tracks are infringing. Oh boy, that's quite the statement. And I don't know if it's millions. I really would love to know this number, but let's say it's hundreds of thousands. So of the hundreds of thousands of TuneCore songs that it distributes, most are infringing. If they're popular, it's quite the statement. For example, infringing versions of the record label's music distributed by TuneCore, such as sped up or remixed versions, are highly popular among social media users. Okay, why? Because of TikTok? You guys have seen the kind of numbers that these viral videos do on social media platforms. And then I would imagine that the user who's like, oh my gosh, I just got like 20 million views on this, would just run to a music distributor, upload the song, and if it does get passed, if it literally is a sampled version sped up, I think it's fair again just to be like, okay, well, maybe these music distributors need to have a better process in place to catch it, right? What are you currently doing? How can we improve it? You know what I'm saying? But I'm not surprised if the song goes super viral that it then will be put onto music platforms. The sped up version, this has led to increased revenue for TuneCore because of its payments correspond to the popularity of the tracks it distributes. I don't know that that's true. And maybe I'm missing something. But again, if they were taking a percentage, then I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. Right? You're taking a percentage, the more streams, the more money, the more that TuneCore makes. I mean, I guess if someone's on a free plan. In addition, TuneCore has fraudulently claimed ownership of tracks available on YouTube in which the copyrights are actually owned by the record labels, which allows it to collect advertising revenue related to third-party videos that match the claimed recordings. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying that record labels don't have to go through the same process that all of you watching this have to go through, which is If there's a claim that someone else is making money off of your copyrighted content, you file a DMCA takedown, which is what this is. And then you get to go after the infringer. Now, again, the middle person or company, which in this case is the music distributor, they may have safe harbor. Now, what it sounds like to me is that the record labels are just trying to figure out a way to shortcut the safe harbor and to do away with this shield so that they can walk on up and be like, look, Tunecore, you're making all your money off of these artists and they all come to you and they have to be here. And so now we're suing you. And you better believe this is not going to be the last time that we see that the major record labels are suing music distributors. Like, I think this is the first. I think they're going to start going after every major music distributor. So if you are a music distributor watching this, you really need to look at what you have. What are your protocols that you have in place to try to safeguard and to check the music so that you are not just freely distributing infringing music? Here's what they say. Let me go back to this. So, harm to the record labels through Tunecore's exploitation of their copyrighted music on information believed the infringing songs distributed and licensed by Tunecore have been streamed, i.e., publicly performed, downloaded, or reproduced in videos hundreds of millions of times. All right, so I mean, like, can we just say the word TikTok in here? Like, why are they not talking about it? Across the digital music ecosystem on a wide variety of digital music services, Tunecore's unlawful conduct has caused and continues to cause substantial and irreparable harm to the record labels and their artists. Aw, you guys are so nice for your artists. The record labels' sound recordings are creative works that are protected by the Copyright Act. Oh, okay, we get it, we get it, we get it. So look, we get down into the actual causes of action. So now they go copyright infringement. This is direct copyright infringement. The sped up versions that you allowed to be distributed on your platform. Copyright infringement, they go on and they're like, you're contributing to copyright infringement by allowing it. So they basically say copyright infringement a bunch of different ways. And then they go, well, pursuant to the Copyright Act, we're seeking, guess what? Statutory damages. And that's why we want the $500 million. What they're going to do here, and this is the thing, we've talked about Tunecore and these music distributors who in some instances in their contracts. And so for me, I'm like, man, this is just dog eat dog, because now you got a new bully coming after Tunecore. Kind of back to the other lawsuits that we talked about. So the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine lawsuit for $600 million on just being like, gotcha. The Copyright Act says that we can get statutory damages. And you have these screenshots, these moments saved in time of these different websites, and certain licenses have expired. And so because you had them, gotcha. And what they're going to do is they're going to get these companies to settle. But I think that if a company comes back, and so for Tunecore, let me go to what I would tell them if I was representing them. I would throw the biggest fit about this complaint as my first step. It's a very important step as the attorney to get fired up. And I'm fired up. And you guys know how I feel about Tunecore, okay? That's how fired up I am. And I would say you need to file a motion to dismiss, like just right out the gate. This is absolutely everything that they're alleging falls under safe harbor, and Tunecore would have that so long as they have these processes in place, right? They do check the music, they do their best, they're dealing with a very high volume of users. And also there's just a misunderstanding of the person who drafted this and just being like what you're saying is just a little bit silly. That you think that, artists who are like, oh my gosh, I put out this sped up version, or I did this mixtape. I'm like a little 17-year-old on TikTok. And then I'm going to come together with Tunecore, or I already came together with Tunecore. And it was this big plan. And then to submit what their payment methods are. And to be like, well, actually, we're not even taking a percentage of most music. Maybe all the music, but most of the music at a minimum. And so that doesn't even make sense, because it's not like we benefit if there is more infringement. So I would do a motion to dismiss all day long. I would seek attorney's fees all day long for a frivolous lawsuit that this is. And this just makes me so worried for the music businesses that I represent through my law firm, real businesses who are making real money, helping artists, helping producers, owned by artists, owned by producers, doing all this. And just knowing that this is now the game that record labels are playing, that they are specifically seeking out businesses because they have deeper pockets. And in some instances, they have insurance to actually pay down a claim if there really is potentially a legitimate basis for copyright infringement. So guys, I'm interested to get your thoughts. Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.